Some people say that Venice, aka the City of Water, should be called the Sinking City, but it should also be called the Flooding City. Made up of 118 islands in the middle of a lagoon at the head of the Adriatic Sea in northern Italy, it seems unbelievable for such a grand city as Venice to be floating in a lagoon of water, reeds, and marshland. But there it is, perched atop mud sediments that are shifting, a city made more vulnerable to flooding thanks to global warming. The city has been experiencing floods for centuries, but in recent times they've become more frequent and destructive. In November 2019, Venice was brought to its knees when it suffered its worst flooding since 1966. The tide killed 2 people and submerged over 80% of the city, devastating homes, restaurants, and monuments like Doge's Palace and St. Mark's Basilica. Well, it's time to do something about it and protect the city. Welcome back to the World Tour channel. Today we're talking about Venice and its flood, which are an increasing problem for this city. Of course, people are thinking about fixing this problem, and it seems that the authorities have found a solution. We'll also talk about that solution today. However, before we start talking about the amazing project that will save Venice, you need to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the next videos. Are you ready for this one? Let's start. Thanks to climate change, rising sea levels, and pre-pandemic heavy cruise ship traffic, Venice might be pushed underwater within the next 100 years. That's where MOES, an acronym for Modulo Sperimentale Elettromeccanico, Experimental Electromechanical Module, comes in. The MOES system is located at the inlets of Lido, Malamocco, and Chioggia, the 3 gates of the coastal cordon through which the tide spreads from the Adriatic Sea into the lagoon. To respond to the objectives set by the law for Venice 798/84, the complete defense of the entire lagoon from the high tides of any level, an integrated system of works has been developed that foresees the barrier of mobile gates, able to isolate the lagoon from the sea during the events of high tide, complementary tides, and the rise of the banks and pavements, at least up to positive 110 centimeters in the lowest in the lagoon dwellings. The integration of these interventions defines an extremely functional defense system that guarantees the quality of the water, the protection of the morphology in the landscape, and the maintenance of the port activity. So what are the operating principles of this $7 billion project? Let's take a look. It consists of rows of mobile gates at the 3 inlets, which temporarily separate the lagoon from the sea in the event of a high tide. There will be 78 gates divided into 4 barriers. At the Lido Inlet, the widest, there will be 2 rows of gates of 21 and 20 elements respectively, linked by an artificial island, 1 row of 19 gates at the Malamocco Inlet, and 1 row of 18 gates at the Chioggia Inlet. The gates consist of metal box-type structures, 20 meters wide for all rows, with a length varying between 18.5 and 29 meters, and from 3.6 to 5 meters thick, connected to the concrete housing structures with hinges, the technological heart of the system, which constrains the gates to the housing structures and allows them to move. Under normal tidal conditions, the gates are full of water and rest in their housing structures. When a high tide is forecast, compressed air is introduced into the gates to empty them of water, causing them to rotate around the axes of the hinges and rise until they emerge above the water to stop the tide from entering the lagoon. When the tide drops, the gates are filled with water again and return to their housing. The inlets are closed for an average of between 4 and 5 hours, including the time taken for the gates to be raised and lowered. Construction of MOES was authorized by the Committed Tone on April 3, 2003, and the associated construction sites opened the same year. Work began simultaneously and continues in parallel at the 3 inlets of Lido, Malamocco, and Chioggia. Currently, about 4,000 people are employed in the construction of MOES. On July 10, 2020, the first full test of the system was successfully conducted. Amid fanfare, the Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte activated the 78 mobile barriers. MOES is expected to be fully functional by the end of 2025. It was used actively to combat threatened flooding on October 3, 2020. Of course, projects of this size are rarely without their detractors. One of the main criticisms leveled at the Moes is that the barriers interfere with the lagoon ecosystem, turning it into a pond rather than a living lagoon. But when the barriers were up for 48 hours last year, that was as a trial to test their resistance. In the future, even in periods when the barriers are up daily, it will only be for a few hours at a time. They have also installed locks at Chioggia and Malamocco to enable some fishing vessels and industrial ships to pass while the barriers are up. We hope that this is the final solution and that the problem will be solved by 2025. What do you say? Do you believe that the Moes system will save Venice in the future? Let us know your opinion in the comment section below. Don't be shy. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and drop us a like. We hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you again soon.